Healthy Families Foundation athlete Taba and her husband Percy began nationwide campaigns to save and improve relationships within family structures across the country. In studio, I am with Ashley Taba from Healthy Families Foundation to discuss their quest to restore families and relationships. Good morning, Ashley. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Nice to meet
you. You and your husband have embarked on nationwide campaigns, right? Tell us some more about these campaigns and the whole purpose of these campaigns.
So we had a TV show, and the TV show aired on BTV. And then after that, this was in 2020, then people around the country started saying, this show has changed our life. Could you help us to be able to change other people? And so then we started there was 82 of those people from all over the country, from Gumare to Maun, Pique, all over. And so we started these 82 groups all over the country, and then they would watch the TV show, they would read the book, and then the book was based on the TV show, and they would discuss it. And so one of those 82 groups was in the village of Raycox, and that was in March 2021. Then they asked us, can you come and teach what you told on TV? Can you teach it in person? And then they actually raised the funds to translate this book into Botswana. Wow. And so then we went to Raycox, that was in March of 2021. And then after Raycox, there was about 1,000 people there every day. Then Soroi was like, now you have to come to us and teach us in our village. So then probably about 1,500 people in Soroi, and that was in November of 2021. And then Mahalapi was like, no, now you have to come to us. And that was about 2,000, and that was in March of this year, of 2022. And then Francistown was like, no, now you have to come to us. And so then Francistown just finished in November of this year, and that had 3,270 people every day. So it's an 18-day campaign with thousands of people, and we've done 5 of them across the country.
But what necessitated this whole establishment of the campaign? What was the problem and what were you trying to solve?
So basically, we just realized that a lot of the social ills that we have in Botswana, like gender-based violence, poor education rates, suicides, divorce rates, fatherless homes, a lot of the things that we deal with as a culture, they can stem back to a broken home. But if you had a healthy home, then at school, you'd be more interested in your education than stressing about the fight that you just had, or worried about where the food is going to come from, or worried about whether your father is going to come or not going to come. So a lot of these issues we realized, gender-based violence, if you had a healthy relationship, you wouldn't be abusing each other because you would be loving each other. So if we could give people practical tips on how to have healthier, happier homes, then we could literally change the narrative of a lot of the social ills that we're fighting. Because what we realize is that a lot of times what we're dealing with is raising awareness, but we're not solving problems. And my husband and I were really passionate about solving the problem. Not like we want to see it stop. We don't want to talk about it, we want to stop it. So what we found with literally, this campaign has now reached over 10,000 Botswana. Wow. And by our data shows that because we leave and they continue, that we're probably talking about around 20 to 30,000 Botswana that have been reached by these campaigns. And most of them say that their lives are changed. Because the way the campaign works is we teach one chapter of the book every day, and then that's 12 working days. So every chapter, we teach a different chapter. We teach about 300 people in the morning in a central location. And then each one of those people then go back into the community and teach 10 to 20 others for 12 working days. Wow. So for 12 working days, when you're teaching 2,000 to 3,000 people, every day we teach them about communication, then the next day about children, then the next day about finances, then the next day about spirituality, and then in-laws and gender-based violence. You change people. I mean, that's a big commitment. And we're seeing character change, behavioral change, and we're seeing communities being transformed.
And talk about the transformation of communities. Obviously, every community has its own issues to deal with, right? And let's talk about Raycox maybe, for instance. What are the type of issues that came up from Raycox, and how did you manage them or handle them?
Well, okay, so one of my favorite stories from Raycox was, there's actually 2 maybe from Raycox that stood out to me. One of the issues that we saw a lot was that they had this phrase, we thought every roof leaked. And the concept was, we don't talk about the problems that we have in our house because we assume that you have them in your house too. So we put on a smile, and we smile in public, and we do this, but inside we're really hurting. But we're not going to talk about it because you're also smiling and you're also hurting. And so when we began to teach through the book practical tips, and like my husband and I were sharing, we're not perfect at all, and we share that in this book. But when we began to teach about like how we have a healthy and happy relationship, people are like, I've never seen that modeled, and I didn't even know it was possible. But I just thought every roof leaked. So you're telling me that we can actually work these things out and enjoy marriage? Like the title is Making Marriages Fun. And when we start campaigns, people are like, fun, marriage, that's like, it doesn't go together, you know? And so that was something that was really exciting, was to see so many people learn that marriage could be good and aspire for that. Another thing that was interesting in Raycroft's was this culture of, they would tell us that the husband would say he looked at the woman as another child. So he doesn't need to talk about money with her. He doesn't need to talk about maybe what he does when he goes out at night or when he doesn't come home at night. And so when we began to teach communication tips and how to have a really good marriage through open and honesty, I remember one day we taught one of the lessons on finance. And so the people, when we started teaching, in the morning teaching, that chapter, they said, there's no way we're going to be able to do this in our groups. They're not going to listen to us say, talk openly about your money, share, make it our money, not your money. And they came back the next day and they're like, wow, people were actually like, this would work. And so one of the favorite stories was this lady came back. I think she was like 60 or 70, an older lady. Right. And she was like, you know, my husband has gone through your campaign and now he's given me the money. This is the first time. She was an older lady. Like, we've been married for over like, I don't know, 50 years. This is the first time he's coming. He said, my wife, I never knew I was supposed to involve you in this. This month, you take the money, you decide how we're going to spend it. And she's like, I mean, I didn't even know how much money we made. Like, he's always just, that's been his thing. So that's just maybe a situation for breakups.
So I'm curious to know just how you get people to talk and to have these conversations. Obviously, there are cultural barriers, there are even language barriers as well. How do you get people to talk and to talk honestly and have open conversations?
So that's one of the things when we first started, we thought there's no way people are going to talk. Like, people don't talk about these issues, you know? Well, it's honestly, I can't tell you how, but now that we've done 5 of them with over 10,000, it works. So I think maybe the first thing is that my husband and I, in the morning, when we do our training in the morning, because we always train them and they go out and train others. Right. So when we do our training, we're very honest about ourselves. So I think when you're talking with someone and they're being honest about what's going on in their lives, it kind of gives you the freedom to say, oh, okay, me too. I can. So I mean, like in the book, there's issues like conflict resolution, or we'll talk about our fights and like, okay, this is how we had a fight, this is how we solved it. What about you? When you have a fight, how do you solve it? Right. So when we do that, we do skits, we make it open, we ask good questions, like good questions meaning questions that make you think. And then when we leave, they go out and when they do their groups, these are groups of 10 to 20 people. So the first day or two, people aren't as open about themselves. But remember, they can talk about us. And they don't have to talk about them. So you can project and get advice like, you know, Percy and Ashley, they were saying that they were having issues with their in-laws. I mean, you know, other people, they also, you don't have to say me. Right. At first you make it, you know, other people. Yeah. And you're safe because that we're allowing you to do that because we talked about ourselves. Well, then by the day 3 or 4, then you're maybe starting to say I. And then by day 12, when you've talked about in-laws, finances, affairs, substance abuse, you're like, you formed this support group where even when we leave after the 18-day campaign, I say 18 days because there's an opening and a closing ceremony and there's weekends. Those groups, our data is showing us that even a year later, they're still meeting. Because when you've met with somebody for 12 days in a society where you don't normally talk about your issues, and you've talked openly about everything going on in your life, you don't just stop. It's become a support system. Wow. So one of the key stakeholders that's always, well, the other thing is we involve the entire village. So the police are involved, the chiefs are involved, the VDCs are involved, the private companies are involved, the government companies are involved, I mean, like everybody. The prisons are involved, the soldiers are involved, like lawyers are involved, pastors are involved, like the entire community. Wow. Because everyone is trained in the morning and then they're supposed to go back. And so when you do that, you're also seeing these attorney generals in Francistown. We just left Francistown. Right. One of my favorite comments in attorney generals was, you know, we just do our work. We come in, we go to court, we do this. We never really get to know what's going on in each other's lives. But they did it over their lunch hour. Their facilitators came in the morning, were trained, and then they would go back and do it on lunch. And I mean, they were just like, this is actually like helping our work environment. There's more unity. It's team building because we're getting to know each other. We're getting to talk and we're getting to see a different side of each other that we normally, you know, this one doesn't really talk to this one, you know, for whatever reason. And like at immigration, the lady on the first day, because 2 people from immigration in Francistown were delegated to come and go back. Right. And they said, we just don't have time to teach this to our people because there's never a time where there's not people coming for help in immigration. Right. And so we said, just try to offer it at lunch. And they said, look, one lady said, I've been working there for 30 years. There's no way people are going to come over their lunch break. And then we said, all you need to do is offer them free help to make their families healthier and happier, and just see what happens. They had 57 people every day at Immigration Town for 12 working days because of the fact that it actually gave them practical advice. Even attorney generals over lunch. So yeah, that's how we get them. We talk about practical issues.
Let's talk about the zeal. What motivates you? Where do you get the momentum to keep going? You know, obviously, I'm sure in as much as you get positive stories and the like, I understand there's also a bit of resistance as well that you might be getting. So the zeal, tell us more about that.
I think it's a call from God. Like, it's also a passion and a love for people. Like, I can't look at people that are hurting and read headlines about GBV and read headlines about suicides and divorces and not feel an internal call to just try. I'm only one person, but everybody, if we can just impact the world around us, we can make a difference. And I have to say that it's not just me. I mean, we work with, like I told you, everywhere we go, we work with hundreds of people. And so I think also just the testimonies you hear back of people that we work with, it's very rewarding to work on a team of volunteers across an entire community to change the community. There's great excitement in that. Yeah.
Can you share one or two more testimonies? You talked about the financial aspect. What about the adage that you talked about the rain and it raining on every household? Apparently, that's also a very common adage that goes around. Yeah.
So I mean, I think every campaign has so many really cool testimonies. I'll just try to think of a few off the top of my head. One of my favorite ones in Mahalapi was a woman came to us one day after she'd been coming to the teachings for a while, maybe a week or two, because remember it's 12 days, so that's like 2.5 weeks. And she said, you know, I've been sleeping with a married man, and today I just decided after this training that it's not right, and I've sent him home. And I just want to let you know that I've confessed to him, and I'm confessing to you, and I am done. Like, I'm done cheating and breaking homes. Wow. And it was just really exciting to know that this campaign has actually saved that family. We hear of hundreds of couples that say they're going to get divorced before this, and now they're not, because it's so practical. And then I think another one fun campaign story in Mahalapi was every day the two leaders would come from prison, and then they would go back to the prisons and teach. And so there was a man there who had been in prison for 10 years for gender-based violence. 10 years. And so the campaign is 12 days. So the 10 days he was in prison. And then after his 10 years came to an end, on the 10th day, he was released from prison. And the first thing he did was find a campaign. He said, I have to finish this teaching. Wow. So he came to us the last 2 days, and he gave a testimony, actually on BTV, so it was publicized across the nation, about how, for the first time, he was learning about how to control his temper and what his value is. Another thing we've realized is people sometimes, they act out in gender-based violence because they're threatened when someone leaves them, because their self-worth is tied to feeling loved. And when you leave, that makes me feel like I'm not valuable. And so when we can teach people that they have intrinsic value in Christ and as a person, then they don't have to fight so hard to keep somebody. And so that was a really fun story to hear him say that he got out of prison and he went back and they tried to start a fight. Because remember, he'd been in prison for 10 years. And he said, I used the tips I learned in the book. Conflict resolution, communication, my value, and I didn't fight that day, and I won't fight again. And it was really an exciting testimony. So yeah, we hear testimonies, we hear about substance abuse. Every campaign we hear about lots of people stopping with substance abuse. Because again, you realize when you start talking to them, a lot of people go to bars because they don't want to go home. Because home is a place of conflict. It's a place but if you fix the conflict in the home by giving them practical tips, then they actually want to go home. And if you're going home, you're not going out.
So these practical tips, Ashley, do they appeal to younger people or older or middle-aged?
So our data shows that every single campaign is across the board almost evenly. So we have young unmarried people, we have old people. Every single campaign is almost like 30%, 30%, 30%, like from the 18 to 35 to 36 to 50 to 50, so it's everybody. Because you realize everybody wants to have a healthy and happy home.
Right.
And even people that aren't married, even though it says making marriages fun, they say, this has helped me so much because now I know what to look for. Nobody is teaching people how to have a healthy relationship. You know, it's like...
And that is possible.
And that is possible.
Right.
You just sort of get into a relationship because you're bored or because you're lonely. And nobody says, here's some tips on how to make that relationship really go the distance. Right. Here's some tips on how to make that relationship healthy and happy. And a lot of people we talk to, especially young people, say, I have never seen in my life a healthy, happy relationship. In my family, it was a single mom home, or in my family, my parents fought, or whatever. And so when you're teaching us this, it's equipping us and empowering us to have hope that marriage is something we can aspire to have.
So in just under 30 seconds, can we speak to the recent priority of mindset change and how we can rebuild families towards having healthy families, and is that possible?
Yes. Right. So having done this with, like I said, over 10,000 Botswana, if we could be empowered to do more of these campaigns, I'm confident we could be making a measurable positive impact and resetting the whole cultural mindset of what relationships are and can be in Botswana. Here's a 30 seconds. I'm running out of time to say.
Thank you very much, Ashley, for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. And of course, that was Ashley Taba from Healthy Families Foundation talking to the possibility of, reshaping family structures and establishing healthy families towards, of course, sustainable development.